Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and in this episode 343. A lot of episodes. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPen89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this rather gloomy Monday?
It's a victory Monday for me. So,
did not answer the question.
I'm doing all right.
All right, good to know. It is Victory Monday for me also. It's also a Victory Monday for Jets fans, but not Giants fans. So congrats to Jets fans. All right. Before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. First thing, that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram, posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you have not done so already, please hit like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise available on our website. You can find that at www.thestrick.land. There's a link there that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there: t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Again, you can find that on our website. And the Strickland has a Patreon which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that has every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag, which is actually not the Strickland mailbag anymore. It is called Takes from Obvious Bozos. That is still hosted by Andrew Steele. And he has a new co-host that is Zach Blatter. They respond to the takes that are submitted in our Takes from Obvious Bozos channel and our Patreon in our Discord, and then they grade and react to your hot takes that you submit. And Strickland has a Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gives you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave with Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, or NFL podcast that is hosted by Constantine and Jeffrey Rasmussen. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits like listening on product recordings and merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. The last of the major pro sports leagues kicks off this weekend. BetOnline is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL, and college football and NHL in full swing, BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. Get everything NBA at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access for every sport anytime. Head to the BetOnline app or website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Knicks are now 1-2. They split a weekend back-to-back. They win on Friday in Atlanta. They lose in a really, I don't want to say listless, but just they just could not get anything going offensively on Saturday in New Orleans. I don't know. Where are you? Are you concerned about anything you're seeing? Are you happy, overwhelmingly joyful about anything you're seeing, or are you pretty much like, yeah, this looks like what I expected it to be in the early going, and I'm not too worried about it in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, on our Strickland roundtable, they asked for, one of the questions was, how many wins do you predict the Knicks to get? I said 53. But I went through the schedule, and this was not a very scientific process or in depth or anything. But I just went through it, kind of mentally keeping track of, what's a back-to-back, how good is the team, how many games do I think we'll win against the team on the road and all that. And I came up with 53, but I realized as I was mentally going through that process, the Knicks didn't start getting separation from 500, in my simulation, until close to the midway point of the season. They were like 20-15, 20-16, 20. Like, I think that's just going to happen because the front of the schedule. I mean, the schedule is front loaded, and that's without even taking into account the actual, time and rest time and all of that. We're just playing a lot of good teams. So they've lost 2 games. One is to a team many consider a title favorite. There's New Orleans that is healthy, and people forget for the first 20 games of last year, they were the 1 seed, and we were on the road, and the second game of back-to-back. So neither of these are bad losses, and Atlanta's a good win. I'm not as high on as maybe some other people, but A lot of smart people I know or follow are reasonably high on the Hawks, so that's not a bad win at all. In terms of specifics, it's tough to. I don't want to draw sweeping conclusions. Julius Randle having a game with 8 turnovers is less than ideal. I'm not worried about Brunson yet. I don't think like his issues have been an issue of, or like people are adjusting to him or something. I think he's just missing shots. I will say like there's actually one encouraging thing is that I think RJ Barrett has been pretty much everything you and I have wanted him to be, and most Knicks fans have wanted him to be. Which is to say a really good second or third option on a championship team. So I think the issues have been more, it really have been just Randle and Brunson haven't played well. And I mean, you can blame Tibbs all you want, but if that remains the case, the Knicks are screwed no matter what. I don't think it'll remain the case.
Yeah, I not really worried about Brunson at all, to be honest. I think the mid-range stuff is likely going to come around pretty soon. And from 3, he's shot pretty well aside from the Pelicans game. If I were to be concerned about anything with him, I would say that I think even in the last preseason game, he was doing this a bit. I know it's easy to like. I thought they got a bad whistle against the Pelicans. I don't really like. I thought a lot of that game was just very weirdly officiated. They did let a lot go both ways, but it felt like the Knicks were getting a pretty short end of the whistle there. But he did this in the last preseason game against the Wizards. He picked up a tech there. I know he picked up a tech in this past game also. And I also think like he seems to be somebody who's been getting targeted with these new flopping rules or whatever. I actually don't agree with either of the flopping fines calls or whatever that he received. Both those to me seem like he's not even begging for a call. So it's really hard for me to see how that's a flop. I think he lands on a guy's foot in both instances. So that was pretty problematic. I think they missed a call again in this Pelicans game where where somebody landed in his landing area on a jumper as well. But anyway, like I think he needs to. I get the frustration with the officiating for him. I think he needs to be careful to not let that take away from his focus. I'm not saying that it definitely has, but I do feel like he's getting into it a little bit more with the refs than he did last season. And maybe some of that is an overall frustration thing because he's missing shots that he knows he can make. His 3-point shooting against Atlanta was awesome, obviously. And I think he shot the ball well from 3 in the opener, too. I want to say he went 2 for 5 from 3. Pelicans one was the only one where he just had the 3 going. But like at some point, the floater, the mid-range stuff, I'm fairly confident that will start going. He's not, to me, it does not look like he's getting locked up. It just looks like he's missing shots that you'd expect him to make at some point. Randle, the last thing I'll say about Brunson, he needs to do a way better job at the start of these games getting other guys involved. And very specifically, he needs to fucking find Quentin Grimes. Like, it's kind of a joke at this point how little he's looked for him or found him even on open looks. So that's something that needs to be like drilled and something that needs to be a focus for him, quite honestly. With Randle, I'm not too worried about the shooting numbers right now. I think that'll come around, but I feel like he's trying, and I thought this in preseason too. I didn't mind it. I don't mind it actually at all as a thing. It feels like he's trying to be more of a playmaker this year and trying to like let the game come to him and be more aggressive about creating for others before he starts looking for his own shot. And I appreciate that. And I think that's like worthy of praise or whatever, but it feels like it's getting his entire game out of whack. Like he has not looked, even when he's looking to score, it just feels like he's kind of caught in two minds. And I think his decision-making has suffered a little bit for that. And I know that like he didn't have a turnover against the Celtics, but whatever it is, like, again, I challenge anybody to watch that Celtics game and tell me he played well. I don't think he was pump faking and doing stupid shit like that as he was doing in the Celtics game nearly as much against the Pelicans. His game against Atlanta, he was flat out good, even though he didn't shoot well. His playmaking was good in that game. Unlucky not to get a triple double. I think his defense looked better over 3 games. On aggregate, there's still individual moments where you're like, "What the fuck are you doing, Julius?" But on the whole, I would say that he's looked better on defense and more locked in. But he is just, it feels like he's a little bit stuck in mud, and his decision-making process, while he's trying to recalibrate his game individually, I think is affecting the sum total of the team right now. So that's maybe just something he needs to work through, find the better balance, whatever it is, or just get back to like playing how you know he can play. I think that's something to keep an eye on. I tweeted as much after the game on Saturday, where I
do you
said,
think he's playing differently from how he normally plays?
I think he's trying to be more of a playmaker. I don't think he's being like.
Do you think he's too passive, or you think he's
kind of a little bit sometimes? Like, I think when he's putting the ball on the floor, he's like driving to pass, which fine, but like he's not somebody I totally love, like trying to be some cerebral off the bounce playmaker. I feel like when he keeps it simple, that's best for him. And in that Pelicans game, it just felt like constantly he was trying to like be way too cute with it. And some of this, like, I don't know where this comes in terms of like, is it the player's execution? Is it Julius, hijacking the offense? Is it Tibbs? This is what he wants them to do. But I thought in the Atlanta game, especially, there were a lot of good, like, he has the ball at the top of the key and he makes quick swing passes. He's making like quicker swing passes and finding the extra man and all that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that is good. And I think when he catches the ball from that position, I like his decision making a lot more against the Pelicans. And some of this is because the Pelicans were playing good defense. Some of it is also the Knicks were kind of just like allowing it to happen, but they were feeding him a lot in the post, mid-post, elbow areas and stuff with his back to the basket. And I don't like him in those. And I think that's when he gets into the most trouble as a playmaker, aside from like when he spins into like, the lane or something. But when he has his back to the basket, he doesn't have the feel for that consistently in the way that other guys do. And I think he even had a couple of turnovers where like he catch them on the post. He's looking over his shoulder one way. And then I think McCollum got him on one where he just came and swiped the ball in from behind. I forgot who it was exactly, but like, I think that's something that they need to avoid with him. So like, I appreciate trying to play make with him. And if that's something that is not just a Julius thing, but like a team wide effort thing, that's fine. But they need to really examine like, okay, what does it mean to want Julius to be more of a playmaker? How do we get that to happen in a way that's efficient and actually plays to his strengths? And I feel like when you throw it to him, stagnant ISOs, mid-post stuff, that's not what he's good at. So that's the last one. And then the last thing I will say is like, I got to say, I think Mitch has been awesome these last 2 games. I thought aside from Zion, he was the best player on the floor in that Pelicans game. Like I thought he was awesome in that game. But I'm not liking what I've seen from Josh Hart or DiVincenzo. And with DiVincenzo, some of it is just like, it's not this. I want to be very clear. This is not about them as players. This is not like, do I think they're bad players? No, I think they're good players. And I think they've individually, especially DiVincenzo's case, done good things. We saw against Atlanta. He did a really good game. But what I am not liking from either of them is big fan of them getting rebounds and pushing the ball to the floor. Not big fan of, there's nothing in transition. Let me now try to initiate the set. I don't want these guys initiating a fucking half-court set ever. Not once. Like, never in life should they be initiating half-court offense if they're on the floor, especially if they're on the floor with 2 guys that can create. And for the most part in these games, they have been playing with Quickly and RJ, or Quickly and whoever it is. And I don't notice it as much when Brunson's on the floor, but when Quickly's been the guy on the floor with them, and I will say, even with, like, in the first game and through much of the preseason, what I liked is that even when Quickly was on the floor with like DiVincenzo and Hart, and even if RJ wasn't on or Brunson wasn't on or Randle was on, it was just Quickly and those guys and whoever else. Quickly was the one bringing the ball up the floor. He was very much the point guard, running the offense, whatever you want to call it. I did not like against Atlanta how often DiVincenzo was bringing the ball up the floor, and some of that I thought was like they had quickly coming off these curls, and they just maybe wanted to get him going downhill a little bit. Fine. I thought it got really bad in the Pelicans game. I thought DiVincenzo was bringing the ball up way too much, and not just off boards, but like as designated, like bring the ball up before as the kind of first sequence of initiating the offense. Did not like that at all. I think that's a big mistake. I don't think it does him any favors, and I think it doesn't do that group any favors. And I think Josh Hart right now is not he's not gotten off to a good start to the season. His decision making on offense has been suspect. I thought he got a bad whistle against the Pelicans. I still don't think that explains some of his struggles in that game. And his decision making flat out has not been good. When he's doing a thing right now, he constantly is over penetrating when he does go to the rim, getting himself into dangerous positions. He's kind of having to make wild passes out. I have not liked that. I have not liked. I just think he's pressing. It feels like he's pressing. That's what it feels like to me. Like maybe it's a contract. I don't know. I wouldn't say he looks tired, but I don't think he's moving and playing at the same way he was when we got him last season. I don't know. It's just something that it's not been good. So his defense has looked okay. I thought he got a bad whistle against the Pelicans. I still have no idea how they called that foul on him. The one that Ingram got, like it's either a no call or an offensive foul. It's definitely not a defensive foul. But then he compounded that fucking pass he made at the end of the third quarter was a joke. Like that's crazy. He threw a fucking full court pass and nobody touched. So I got the ball right underneath our basket with 2.5 seconds left. Like that should never happen. Granted, like they didn't score, which is good, but like that was an unacceptable play. And I think he's to me, when
and especially from someone who's known as the veteran steadying heady presses, right?
Yeah, I did not like that. And I just think like it feels like every time he gets the ball right now, he's trying to make something happen and he's not playing. Like he's just not making smart decisions or good decisions even. He's just trying to do way too much, it feels like. And the last thing I'll say, and I actually have some sympathy for this, if some of this is individuals trying to work themselves into like just kind of get their shit together and figuring out how they fit into what we're trying to do as a group, I get that. And I think that's totally reasonable to have going on early in the season. I know people will be like, well, we brought back 8 of the 9 guys. It shouldn't be a big deal. Like, I don't think that's how it works. Each season is different. I think you see teams figuring shit out and early in the season, even if they have continuity. So that's not a big deal for me. And I think Tibbs might also be kind of figuring out like how to deploy all these guys in the best way he wants possible. And that's why like I think he should have like the one thing I didn't like him pulling quickly when he did to leave Hart in the game at the end of the Pelicans game. Not that I don't think it would have mattered either way, but like Hart did nothing in that game. Like he had nothing. He was doing nothing offensively. And even if you want to say like Randle was terrible in that game, he was probably the worst player on the team in a lot of ways. I'm still okay with Randle coming back in because it's like you needed some kind of offensive spark, even on the off chance that if you were going to make a comeback. And there's always a chance that Julius can get hot. There's always a chance. Same thing with Brunson, right? Like I get that. But that's kind of why I don't get why you stuck with Hart over Quickly, especially given that Hart didn't really do anything in that game. Not that Quickly was great or anything. I don't even think he was particularly good, but like he at least scored a little bit. And like that's what you needed. You needed to just hope that somebody got hot at the right time. So I didn't like that. And the last thing I'll say is just like I think there's still some stuff he's figuring out the rotations. But yeah, those are my big things. Like I just think when that bench group is in, I really don't like how much in the last 2 games we've seen DiVincenzo and Hart on ball, initiating, trying to create. Like that's not their game. That's not what they should be doing.
Do you think the bench would benefit from playing Randle with them more?
I don't know. Randall's just not really playing that well right now, so it's really hard to say. But I kind of like RJ in that group anyway. I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think RJ has been much better on ball. Like I can see him carrying that unit all season, but Randall's a little more diverse in his game. So you wonder if he can take some more of those possessions from Dante and Hart.
Sorry, say that again. The last part.
I wonder if Randle can absorb some more of those possessions that Dante and Hart are taking right now. Yeah,
Maybe, but like
when
this is
RJ
where
could, even
I
though
think
RJ has made
yeah,
unequivocally really
yeah,
big leap.
I think you just leave it how it is right now because you want that group to like have a chance to develop some type of continuity, consistency, whatever. I know DiVincenzo is like he's a little bit he involves himself in the play, I think, more consistently than a guy like Obi was able to in New York. Just given that like he is a guard and he, whatever. But like you need to give these guys time, I think, to figure it out. If in 15 games, 20 games or something, that unit is still kind of struggling for balance, then I think maybe then you consider it. But for right now, I think seems like he's operating pretty generally on how he wants these lineups to be and what he like wants the groupings and pairings to look like. I'm okay with that. He just has to know at what point and what, and I think he's also trying to figure out like, okay, what do I have in DiVincenzo and how does that fit into what I want to do with this group? How do I make these guys fit all together? Like I haven't really noticed any, like so far, I haven't seen a lot of great 1-2 kind of play between IQ and DiVincenzo, right? That's something that I think comes in time as those guys develop and an understanding and a chemistry playing together. But like my big thing is just like I'm kind of okay with 4 guys in this team initiating offense, and everybody else needs to kind of figure it out off of that. Like if DiVincenzo can create on the second side of an action, I'm fine with that. That's different to me. But way too much like him putting the ball on the floor and like early clock, running a pick and roll. Like, no, I don't want to see that shit, dude. I have no desire to watch DiVincenzo running pick and rolls. Like that shit is crap. So yeah, that would be my major things. But like, yeah, like I'm not too worried about what I'm seeing from them as a group.
How would you draw any parallels between kind of how DiVincenzo has struggled initially, and again, it's been 3 games. I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's like I really don't think it's responsible to have takes. I mean, I don't know if I'd go this far, but when was it a few years ago where they said 20 games is when we'll know? I think that was the Fizdale year, right? The year he got fired. I do want to take my time. When it comes to DiVincenzo, do you see any parallels between him and kind of how Isaiah Hartenstein struggled when he first got here?
Maybe. I could totally see it, but I think. I mean, it's always a difference. You could tell, especially in like, there's been a few instances where you can tell that DiVincenzo doesn't know where he's supposed to be on a given play, and then they like take longer to get into a set, or it just fucks up the set to begin with. So I think there's some of that going on for sure. Hartenstein was injured. He was dealing with an injury on top of adjusting. So I think that's a little bit different. But like, yeah, I mean, I do think there's some of that going on with him just because that's natural. Dude, this guy's layup package is fucking crazy bad. Holy, he missed that one on the break, right, against the Pelicans. I was just like, it was so weird too because it felt like one he could have dunked, honestly. And he's obsessed with this, that like when you're going to your left, kind of finish, kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it, but kind of like you're in like off the outside of your hand finish.
Yeah, kind of curving around. Yeah.
He loves that trying to go for that finish. I think he's at like 1. So I don't know. Look, Warriors fans did say that we should be wary of his finishing around the rim, but like, yeah, it's not great. Hopefully it gets better because some of this stuff has been, you're like, how do you even miss that one? I mean, that one on the break against Pelicans was unbelievable. And then I guess like the final thing is their end of game stuff against both Boston, not great, but especially the Hawks was
that's just
really
a tips thing, right?
Well, it is, but like, I mean, the Brunson, that pass to RJ was ridiculous. I don't know what that was. That was just like super nonchalant. There's no excuse for that. There was really, I mean, he was being pressured, but it wasn't like, holy shit, like really locking him up. That was a really bad play. But they need to get their end of games together, and they need to get, obviously free throws together. The shooting, I know everybody like they're definitely dealing with some conditioning things too. I think that was really obvious in the Pelicans game. Second, like you're on the back night of a back-to-back, second night of a back-to-back rather, and early in the season, and you can just tell like they just could not get that gear. They fought the entire game. Like I thought the effort was good. Like I didn't feel like they were dogging it. It wasn't anything like that. I think they fought in every game. It's like the Celtics game and the Hawks game. They've gone behind early, and or not the Hawks game. Sorry, the Pelicans game. They've gone behind early, and they found a way to still kind of like stay in the game and at least give themselves a chance going into the fourth quarter. But like, good God, like that was just, you could tell they had no juice. But yeah, that's like part of the reason why I'm not too concerned over what I'm seeing. And I actually think the defense has been pretty solid. Like I thought their defense against the Pelicans was good. There was some weird stuff with Zion I didn't like, where I'm like, I think you can fall into the trap of playing too deep on him, and like you don't want to give him a runway to get into the paint, because then there were so many where he just like had a runway and he just took off, and you're like, fuck, we can't do anything. But I thought Julius needed to play a little bit higher up, shade him, like stand literally to his left, don't let him go left. I know it's easier said than done, but overall, I think the defense has been pretty okay. And like that, like yeah, sure, the Hawks put up 120. They put up points on everybody they played so far. They put up 110 on the Hornets, and they put up whatever they put up yesterday on the fucking Bucks, like 127 or something, and they called the dogs off in that pretty early. So that team can score. I think they're going to be a really good offense. So like, I think the Knicks defense so far has been pretty decent. I thought they played well against the Celtics. Like, I was very impressed with the defense that game, and I thought they played well against the Pelicans also.
Yeah, the Celtics. Tatum got 34, I think. Porzingis got 30. Tatum hit a lot of tough shots. I thought Grimes played good defense on him. Porzingis, it was mostly things that, especially against the Knicks defense, is probably a little bit more open to or vulnerable to some of the things that a guy like Porzingis can do. We've seen guys like Vucevic have success on them. If you can step out and hit the three, not even a knock on Mitch, who I agree with you has been great, but just the way that the Knicks like to use their bigs, he gets put in pretty difficult situations. But other than that, I thought the rotations were good. I thought I don't know if I would say they clamped down, but they really improved over the course of the game. A couple of breakdowns late. Their defense looked how I would expect it to look. I thought Grimes did, yeoman's work in a tough matchup with Tatum. I thought RJ was good when he defended Tatum. I've actually been impressed with RJ's defense. I thought Quickly was vintage, great team defense quickly. But I also thought Brunson and Randle weren't that good. I thought Mitch was really good. So I think the defense has not been the issue, right? I think they had I thought they had one real bad game. I think we both agree. They had a good game against the Hawks with some flaws. I think I would say they had a good game against the Celtics with a lot of flaws, and their two best players basically didn't show up. And then the only one that's really concerning is New Orleans. But again,
I don't think that's concerning. Like I'm just
that is potential, like where they looked bad. That's what I would say. I agree with you.
I really don't even think they look that bad. I don't. I think they looked fine. I think they turned the ball over a bit, but like I'm just like they had.
One of them turned it over 8 times.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They had 10. They had 18 turnovers as a team. 8 of that is Julius. Like,
but that he's a big part of the team.
Yeah, but he's not going to turn the ball over 8 times a game. Like that's even in his like bad moments. Like 8 turnovers is probably like a fucking career high for him.
Famous last words.
Yeah, but like if you look at the box score, they completely dominated the glass. They got to the line more than the Pelicans. Not that was much, because they just were not calling shit in this game. They just shot like shit. Like that's really like, and the turnovers hurt, but like they shot like shit. That was the biggest problem. They could not get anything going from 3. Nobody on the team made more than 1 3. By the way, not one person. They finished 7 of 37 from 3. They didn't shoot that well inside the arc either. So they shot 26 of 53 from inside the arc, which is like okay, but not enough to offset a terrible shooting performance from 3.
Yeah, it's below 50%.
Yeah. So like it was just they did not have it at all. And that happens. That there are going to be games like that. I think early in the season, back to back, you understand that one. But like again, like that in that game, they had a defensive rating of 96.2. So like the defense has been there. They've definitely like the concerns I had about their defense coming into the season after especially after what we watched in the preseason. They have kind of weathered that storm pretty convincingly. Now it's just a matter of like we can sit here and talk about everybody else in the fucking team, but if you have two games where Brunson and Randle have been as bad as they were against Boston and as bad as they were against the Pelicans, you're going to lose a lot of basketball games. We can sit here and talk about Tibbs and rotations and this guy and that guy and quickly didn't do this thing. RJ didn't do this thing. Grimes has to make shots. Mitchell Robinson can't dribble. Whatever the fuck you want to say. Like, if those two guys don't show up offensively, you're not going to win. They shot 8 of 29 for a combined 24 points against the Pelicans. You're not going to win games, dude. Like, you're just winning that game is really hard without those guys showing up. And that was the same case against the Celtics. And in that case, they actually got plenty of help. They just didn't hold up their end of the bargain at all. So, like, those two guys have to be better. And that's it. Like, I don't know how much more conversation can even be had about what we've seen in the first three games, because none of this is that like it would be different, I think, if those two guys are playing well and we were 1-2. I would feel a lot differently about that. But they have not played that well. And guess what? The game where they played well, surprise, surprise, Knicks won, right? Like sometimes it really is that simple. And I'm not saying Tibbs has been perfect or Quickly has been perfect or RJ or anybody. All of them have had moments in these first three games. RJ has been probably the best player of the three games. But like all of them have had moments, right, where you're like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not good. That's not good. But that's your best players are kind of like the guys that give you a margin for error. And for two of these three games, those guys have not done that. And even in the Hawks game, like Randle didn't shoot well. And yeah, Brunson was on a heater from three, but his scoring inside the arc so far has not been there. So like these are not great performances that we're getting from these guys, and we're still 1-2. And honestly, in like other scenarios, we could be 3-0 even. Like I know the Pelicans one is a little bit weird given how bad we shot, but that's kind of the point. It's like if you even shot slightly below average, you probably win that game. So I'm okay with what I've seen so far. Obviously, I'm not thrilled about it, but like,
but I mean, if they do you think the looks they were getting were good enough to make that? I mean, is because I'll ask two things. They replaced a at best average shooter. I'm going to say Obi's a below average shooter with a really good one in Dante DiVincenzo. We talked all offseason about how Quickly, Grimes, RJ, even Brunson should improve their 3-point volume. The Knicks have added shooters in the past. Fournier didn't work out for a number of reasons, but they added him. They added Reggie Bullock. They added Burks. And it always seems like we're a poor shooting team. Is that just a relic of the Tibbs offense? Is that because we have Randle here and the spacing is always going to be a little bit weird? Is it the ISO heavy nature? Is that a thing for you yet? Because it feels like this should be the year the Knicks should improve as a shooting team.
Well, they shot the ball well in the first two games of the season.
They did. I mean, what did they shoot against Boston? They were like less than
18 of 41 from three.
From three? 18 of that's what they finished? They started cold as fuck.
Yeah, they didn't start well, but they shot a better percentage and made more threes in that game than Boston. So against the Hawks, they shot 20 of 44 from three. And against Boston, they shot, I'm pretty sure it's 18 of 40. Let me just check. 18 of 41 from three. Like the 3-point shooting has been good. Other side from the Pelicans game, if I would bet even after the Pelicans game, they're probably looking okay in the overall team standings here. But like, yeah, I'm not too worried about the 3-point percentage. I'm not really worried about how well they're going to shoot it or not. The Knicks are 9th right now in the league in 3-point shooting. Granted, these are extremely small sample sizes. For example, the Brooklyn Nets, who I think will be a bad 3-point shooting team, are 2nd in the NBA on 3-point percentage of 42.9. So like, it's important to recognize how small of a sample you're dealing with here. And yeah, like I think it's too early for me to say one or the other. Are they a good shooting team? Are they a bad shooting team? Or is there something to be concerned about? I just, obviously, like, again, we can sit here and talk about the team shooting and all that shit, but like, if Brunson and Randle play better, like, you probably win these games. So these guys just have to be better. Like I don't know. I know this is like very boring, but like I just don't think it's that deep. Like it's very hard to win games if your two best guys are scoring less points than shots attempted. It's generally not a very successful path to success. So if at any point those guys want to string together a couple of good shooting games, that would be awesome, and I'd appreciate that.
Did you know that Julius Randle also had more turnovers than the New York Giants had passing yards?
I did know that. I did know that.
It's a fun stat.
It is.
So, I mean, I mostly agree with you. I think 3 games is too quick. Do you think it's a thing? Do you think defenses are adapting to Brunson, or do you think he's just missing shots?
I think he's just missing shots. I haven't seen anything to make me think like, oh, they're adapting. He's getting good shots. He's getting shots that
He made last
year. Yeah, I think anybody like, I know somebody was talking about number 1 option Brunson getting exposed or whatever the fuck that was, but I don't think that's really a thing. I think he's just missing shots. And
do you think he's trying to do quickly a solid and get him his extension boosted?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, I'm not too worried about this. Tibbs teams in general, I think start off kind of up and down. So if they're still struggling with the same stuff 20 games in, then I think you should be concerned. But for right now, I'm not really worried.
What about Randle?
Randle, I mean, like I said, I just think he's just in his head right now. He's trying to change his game, recalibrate his game, kind of find the right equilibrium, and that's what it is. I mean, the guy I'm really most worried about is just Hart, because, like, I mean, look, he obviously signed a new contract. He shot like amazing from 3 in New York last year. We knew that wasn't going to be something that.
Well, he shot well He shot well against Boston, right?
Yeah, he shot 2 of 4 though. I mean, it's not like he's shooting a bunch of shots.
Well, that for 4 attempts for him is like Steph taking 15. Right?
Yeah,
so like that's not bad volume. It's 4 for a lot of guys.
It's okay, but
and he only played 22 minutes, so like that was reasonable.
I'm just worried about him. Like he's not doesn't look like he's moving as well as he was last year. So maybe there was something to him kind of sitting as much as he did in preseason with whatever the injury was. And then like, look, we saw this with Julius a couple years ago. I don't think we can just dismiss the fact that he has 2 newborn kids at home. Like I don't. Like I think that is a thing. And
home is where the heart is. So
and I don't know. I feel like he's playing like a guy to me who feels like he doesn't have the energy that is required to be awesome at all the stuff that made him awesome last year. Like it feels like he's a little bit tired, a little bit lethargic when I've seen him this year. And that's I don't think it's a question of his effort. I just wonder if he is kind of feeling some of the effects of having twins at home. And
we should notice that
for the first time in his life.
We should note that he's averaging 7 boards a game, almost 6.7. So we're holding him to a pretty high standard, right? This is a guy. Did you see Tristan Thompson's comments, by the way? Speaking of Josh Hart.
I did see that Tristan Thompson said words, and then I went ahead and ignored anything he said because it was Tristan Thompson.
Yeah. I am reading all that. I'm happy for you, or sorry that happened, right? Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, my concerns for Josh Hart are less about, I think, any change, and it's more that you have to ask how sustainable is that type of game, right? Long term, where a guy can't really shoot, can't really create his own offense, but is just like you cannot point to him in your car. He's not the kind of part of your car that you could be like, I know exactly what this does and exactly how much it improves my car's performance, but he is a part of the car that just makes everything run smoother. And you wonder how much utility does that have, and if it's not having utility after a couple of games, I think that's something fair to be concerned about. We've discussed a lot of the concerns. I think both of you and I have been pretty happy with RJ Barrett. Could you talk a little bit about what you've seen from him? Is he turning a corner here? Is this fool's gold? Somewhere in the middle? What are your thoughts on RJ's start?
Um, yeah, I just like how he's playing. I think he's making consistently. He's made better decisions. Still, again, like this is not for all these guys. It's just so early in the season that I think taking too much, good or bad, is probably a mistake. But like, I think RJ is. I mean, look, all I can say is that Atlanta game is probably as good as he's, at least offensively, as good a game as he's had in his career in terms of just like, I'm not talking, I mean, I know he scored 46 against the Bulls or whatever, but in terms of like just kind of operating within the flow, but making plays happen when you get those opportunities, kind of just that balance was excellent in that game. I thought his passing was really good. He did a really good job on the glass. Like he played very, very well in that game. The Boston one was kind of a mixed bag to me. And, with the Pelicans one, like it's not just him. They all kind of had a weird game. So, I'm definitely the biggest thing for me for getting offense, because I think I've always kind of suspected that he'll either do that or he'll just always like I think he's either going to figure that out and we'll see what happens, or he's going to always just be an up and down player. The biggest thing for me is that his defense through 3 games have been really solid. And if he plays solid defense, it just gives him a totally different baseline from what to evaluate him on. And so, like, the Celtics game is probably the best game defensively I think he's played. I mean, I don't want to say his career, but it's up there. And I thought he was good against the Pelicans on defense. I thought he was fine against the Hawks on defense too. I think he's been good through 3 games on end. So that's that's the biggest thing that I'm taking from it, is just that if he plays like that, he can have a bad shooting game and still help you win the ball game. Like that's the difference between what we're seeing from him now versus what we saw from him for the majority of last season, where it was like, oh, if he's not scoring well or shooting well, this guy is definitely not adding anything on the floor right now. He's actually going to be a huge negative value. And like this, in a lot of ways, is kind of the opposite, where like, even if he had shot poorly against Pelicans, he probably would have deserved to close the game and would have been a valuable piece to have out in the game because, because of all of just the fact that he is playing defense and he is providing value in ways that have nothing to do with what he does with the ball in his hands.
On that note, we haven't seen much of Grimes at the 3. So Grimes next to Brunson and IQ, or, Brunson and DiVincenzo, or IQ and DiVincenzo. How much do you think is that just a Tibbs kind of aversion to those small lineups versus, the very understandable and something I agree with, the fact that RJ's been playing really well, especially with those bench units. And do you think we'll see more of those maybe in games where either RJ maybe going to use them more with the starters, or, do you think which of those causes do you think it's an artifact of?
I think it's just a rebounding thing. I don't think he trusts
Grimes to rebound. It's not like RJ is a great rebounder, right?
I think he's probably better than Grimes. I mean, Grimes he's averaged what? How many rebounds? And I know like this is stupid because I don't even think he's a bad rebounder, but he's not getting you the 50-50 rebounds and stuff that like Josh Hart gets, right?
Yeah, but RJ loses some 25. I mean, he definitely did last year. I think so far that's been good. That's honestly one of the most inexplicable parts of his game for me. It's that he's been a bad rebounder, relatively speaking, for most of his career, and he's just a tank. So that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He actually had a bad miss against the Celtics in the opener at the end of the third quarter that cost him a bucket. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I actually think he should be playing Grimes more at the 3 and definitely.
But if you have RJ playing so well, right, that diminishes those chances because he's just going to play more minutes. And then the times when he isn't, you're probably getting more minutes for Hart. So,
yeah, it's just tough. I don't know. I mean, I do think it's worth mentioning that Mitch was really good against the Pelicans, man. He was awesome in that game, and it's unfortunate.
Do you think it was a homecoming that that made him play well?
Could be, but I think the best
play well against the Pelicans. I feel like I haven't tracked it.
Not really. I mean, he's really struggled with Valanciunas before, which is kind of why like that was such a good performance for me is it was a guy that he's struggled with a lot, who has kind of like that post game and that strength that have often given him
and
real
can
real
stretch the
problems.
floor too, right? Same. I mean,
Right.
he's more of a fake shooter than a real shooter, but he can knock one down. So
Yeah. 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 100%. But yeah, like it is just he looked really good again. I thought his defense. Zion tried him several times at the rim and did not get a lot of success. He was not very successful with that. Valanciunas didn't really get much done on him. I know he had a nice little burst for them in the fourth quarter, but like I didn't think he had a very good game either. He went 3 of 7, Valanciunas, so like whatever. Um, he also had 10 offensive rebounds in this game as Robinson. Like he's just and that against Valanciunas, who's a good defensive rebounder. That's actually really impressive. So yeah, I mean, I've not a great opener for him, but I thought the last 2 games have been great. I thought he was fantastic against Atlanta. Also, like I thought he was really good in that game. And you know, a lot of people were giving Capella shit for he didn't come down and then he blew the kind of lob. I kind of get why he didn't come down with the ball. I think if he catches the ball and he gathers it, Mitch is back in the play. Like I think Mitch is right there.
yeah, sometimes you have to make those judgment calls, right? Always come down with 2 is one of those kind of platitudes that if it was that obvious, then people would never try to tip the ball in, right? But the reality is sometimes you have to, right? Just based on positioning. And if there's a guy I think who has enough reps to make that kind of decision, it's definitely Quinn Capella. So
Yeah, 100%. It was just it happens. And I thought that was kind of like, if anything, to me, I took that as like a sign of how impactful Mitchell Robinson had been in that game defensively, that they were thinking about that. And
are you just going off the sign from memory? Or did you record the sign and try to steal
nobody listening to this is going to get that reference.
it?
But
Kurt will. I hope Kurt will.
Kurt will, yeah. But yeah, like I don't know. I thought that was like a funny thing because I didn't watch that game live, so I watched it afterwards, and like I was like waiting for this horrific Capella play that I saw kept getting referenced, and then I watched it and I was like, "That's it? That's the one?" I'm like, I mean, I get why it's like, yeah, you expect him to make that shot, but I also think it's a little bit much. People are like, he should have come down with it, and he's got a layup. It's like, yeah, if he comes down with that, I think Mitch is getting back over there, and he might just swat that shit. But Mitch has been
Or put
playing
him on
really
the
well.
line, which Capella's
Yeah,
not a great free throw shooter either, right? So
yeah. He's playing. Yeah, I know again the opener was not great, but I think he's played really, really well the last couple
the
of games.
opener that's just gonna be a weird matchup. Like I think personally, the next time I would like to see them try Randall on KP more and put Mitch on. Even if it's Tatum, honestly, I would but certainly if it's Horford, they should be having Mitch on Horford um and Randall on KP. That's kind of my thought, but I mean, barring that, it's just that's always going to be a weird matchup for him. Vooch is always a weird matchup for him. Jokic is a weird matchup for him, right? So
Well, I think Jokic we can say is a weird matchup for everybody in the
everyone,
NBA.
and so is KP. Like, let's be like, I don't think Mitch's defense was bad. I think to the extent that he was out of position and KP got some open threes. There was one play where Brunson got beat and Mitch just got kind of caught in no man's land. But that was also that he was in a really bad like where KP back cut him. I don't know if you remember that play on the lob.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't think he was that bad against the Celtics either. It just wasn't a great game for sure. But
he just couldn't make himself
imposing. He couldn't impose his will. But I again give the Celtics credit for a lot of that. So
no.
that's the one phrase no one wants to hear. But I mean, I thought he was good against the Pelicans. I think he's been good so far this year. I think DiVincenzo, it is going to take some time to integrate, and they probably want him to explore. Like I think, with Hartenstein, it was the same thing in preseason. He had a lot of offensive freedom. Then he realized, oh, the threes aren't falling. then they got him to kind of go the other way where he focused on rebounding. And then, when it all clicked, he just seemed to, I think it'll take some time. And both of them, Hartenstein is coming from a Ty Lue offense. DiVincenzo is coming from a Steve Kerr offense. They're having to adapt to, slower pace and all of that. So I'm not too worried about that. I'll ask this: is there, is there anything you wanted to see? Is there anything you've seen besides, you mentioned Josh Hart, that you weren't expecting to see that's concerning? Is there anything that you wanted to see that you haven't, over these first 3 games from the Knicks?
Brunson making shots would be nice. That'd be good. No, I don't really think so. Like, I think some of the, obviously there's stuff I talked about earlier, but I think they're just working some stuff out, getting their conditioning back. The preseason was a disaster, by the way. And if anything, like, there's something for them to take away from this is that I don't know how your preseason schedule ends up being as stupid as the Knicks was, but like that was really stupid. They basically did not have a preseason in a lot of ways for most of their key players. And I think we saw this with the NFL teams this year too, where it was like you have teams that just didn't play their quarterback and their first string guys at all. And you come out opening week and it was like, oh, football's hard. Like, how do we do this? And I think you're seeing that a little bit of that in the NBA too, where teams that rested all their guys in preseason and or rested them significantly or takes some time to build up that stamina in your legs. And yeah, I think you see that with the Knicks a little bit. But one thing I actually have liked seeing, and I know he hasn't shot the ball well the last 2 games after he shot well in the opener from 3 anyway. I like that Quickly's not hesitating on threes. Like I haven't seen a lot of the pump fake, into a worse shot or pump fake to put the ball on the floor and drive into the paint that's already packed or something like that. Like I think that's been good to see. I think obviously DiVincenzo's got a quick trigger, which is nice. And I think Grimes is actually, when he's gotten open shots, he's pulled the trigger on them. Like you want to see those 3 guys very specifically not hesitate on those shots because they will, I believe, over the course of a season, you will benefit from that. Like they will make that worth your while. It's just a matter of sticking with it and don't let your shooting slumps impact your decision making. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not watching this team right now and feeling like I remember at the start of the 2021-22 season,
they were already
for you. Well, even when we were winning, I just thought our defense looked bad, and that was really concerning to me.
You didn't have faith in Evan Fournier and Kemba Walker's defensive prowess?
Kemba Walker's, the less said about him, the better. But I don't feel that way about this team at all. Like I'm not watching this and I'm like, oh man. So like the things I am saying to keep an eye on, to me, are like pretty correctable. If there's one thing obviously to be concerned about, just because we've seen it before, is if Julius really just has a terrible shooting season. That would obviously suck for a lot of reasons. That's something probably to keep an eye on. But like,
but in terms of his process, it doesn't seem like that's a thing. That's the thing that we'd expect to happen at this point, right? So like, he's a little bit disjointed. Whatever.
It's different. It's different to me than 2021-22, where like it felt from the start of the season he was just like off kilter in ways that were like kind of, you're like, are you good emotionally? Like, is everything okay? He's not. It's not that. Yeah, it's not that right now. He's just playing not great offensively, but like, I think his effort's been pretty good. Again, I think his defense has been, I don't want to say good, but like definitely better than what we saw last year, or not. Like, yeah, last year and the season before that, to be honest. I think the offense will come around. I don't know what else really to take away from that. If there's one thing to probably say about this game, if Tibbs could do it over, maybe on the first back-to-back of the season, you throw Deuce in there for a little bit. I don't know.
For who though? For Brunson? Brunson only played 32 minutes opening night.
Yeah, that's the other part. Is like nobody actually played a lot of minutes.
Yeah,
in this game.
So I don't. So. And Quickly wasn't great against Atlanta. He was up and down against New Orleans. I thought overall he was fine, and he was probably their best player against Boston. So
yeah, he definitely was. Yeah,
it's just been tough, I think, to find reduce minutes when Quickly's playing like that, right? Because you're not going to bench Brunson.
Well, yeah, no, of course not.
But yeah, I mean, I think how have you felt about Quickly? Started out with a great performance against Boston, didn't shoot the ball well against Atlanta, a little bit up and down yesterday. I think I saw mixed responses about him. I think most people would probably say he was mediocre against New Orleans. Not yesterday, sorry, Saturday. What have your thoughts on Quickly been so far? Do you think the extension's affecting him? Is it just kind of what you expected, no matter what?
I don't know. I mean, unless he's thinking about the extension every time he takes an open three, or a three that he's relatively open on, I don't know how that would be the reasoning for any struggles he's had so far. I actually thought he played well against Atlanta. I thought he played well. He missed 9 threes, or he missed 8 threes. If he makes 2 of those, I think people are having a completely different conversation about his game. I think he finished with like 11, 6, and 4 in that game or something like that. If he makes 2 of those and they're open threes, he got good threes, he just missed them. If he makes 2 of those threes, I think the conversation is completely different. Oh, wow, what a nice fucking game from our backup point guard, 17, 6, and 4. That's so nice. What a luxury the Knicks have. Yeah, he had 10 shots on 9 points against the Pelicans. Again, I didn't love his decision making, but I think that group is trying to work some stuff out together. And I think once DiVincenzo and Hart dial it back a little bit with whatever they're trying to do, I thought they kind of took RJ out of his rhythm too a little bit with how they were playing. So I think both those guys got hurt in that game from it. So I'm not really that worried about either. I mean, I'm not worried about Quickly. I'm not worried about RJ. If I'm worried about RJ, it's more about long-term stuff that I just had questions about coming into the season, but I'm not worried about him in terms of
it seems like, has he mitigated all of those questions for you pretty much?
No, it's been 3 games.
Okay, but in those 3 games, from what you've seen, do you think those questions have been addressed, or do you think he's just shooting well at the rim and they're putting him in good spots?
I mean, I didn't love how he played against Boston. I mean, I love
the
the
second
defense.
half. The first half was better, I think. But
I love the defense against Boston. I thought his defense was really good throughout.
Seems like he always gets up for Tatum. Maybe it's a Duke thing, I don't know, but that's a matchup it seems like he's always really risen to the level for.
Yeah, definitely gets up for it. I don't know. I think he's playing well. I like a lot of what I'm seeing from him, but I've seen him have 3 good games in a row before. I want him to I'll see. Let's see after 20 games, and if he does it for the vast majority of the next 20, of the first 20 games of the year, then I'll feel a lot differently about it. But we've seen him have good stretches before. We've seen him put together good sequences on offense, on defense, whatever. It's about stringing together a good month, 2 months of the season, carry that over through the rest of the way. That'd be huge. So, that's just what I guess I'm wait and see. I believe that he's going to have a good season. I've talked about this before. I think that last season is going to end up being the worst season of his career, probably. But I expected him to bounce back this year. Is he playing better than I expected even? Yeah, probably. But, and I just mean that from the defensive end of the floor, but offensively, not at all. Defensively, I guess it's nice to see how he's playing. I will say, I guess maybe if there's something to be concerned about the second unit, it feels like Hartenstein is a little bit. He's less involved than I thought he would be. Is probably the best way to put it. I thought he would be a little bit more central to what they're trying to do offensively. There's still time for that to happen, but he was not involved very much at all against the Pelicans at the very least. He did have a nice putback, or I guess free throw line putback, whatever you're going to call it, against Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. But in general, I'm just waiting for him to have more of an impact, and just not impact is the wrong word, but be more involved offensively with that bench group than we've seen. And this is also where I think DiVincenzo and Hart, when they go off kind of script and start trying to initiate themselves or create and all that stuff, I think he doesn't get involved. I know Quickly doesn't get assists for it, but he Quickly's dined up a few times that ended up getting him to the line against the Pelicans. And I think him and Quickly have a pretty good understanding in the pick and roll now, and DHOs and all that stuff. And so when Quick isn't getting on the ball as early or as often as you'd like, or RJ for that matter, in that group, I think it takes away from Hartenstein, and that's tough for him. So, I mean, that's probably where I'm the most concerned with it. And like concern is the wrong word. It's just something that I've got my eye on, right? There are things I have my eye on. There are things I don't. That would be one. I've already mentioned obviously like how kind of the ball handling duties, I guess, are split up with the bench is another. And then just like finding Grimes is another one, like where I'm like, I don't know, like I want this guy. I think they just need to do a better job of getting him involved early in games. That is my big gripe with this team, and very specifically, if I'm gonna be honest, with Jalen Brunson, more so than Randle, because Randle, I think asking him to consistently find player X and get them involved is how you put too much on his plate and set yourself up for disappointment. With Brunson, he has the ability, he can make the pass, he can break down the defense to create openings for Quentin Grimes to capitalize on. But if he doesn't pass it to him, then it doesn't matter. And that can't persist. That has to change as we continue through the season. It's not good enough to just be. I know he had ended up with 6. He ended up with 6 threes against the Pelicans. But I would love to see how many of those were set up by Brunson. It just does not feel like a high enough number, and that is definitely something that we have to be cognizant of, and something that Brunson has to be cognizant of, quite honestly. So we will see how that goes. I am certainly curious to kind of see how that all unfolds. Okay. Well, Stacy is not with us right now. He's with us in spirit, not in body. I'm gonna be honest, like I just don't have a lot to say yet. I know that's bad. I don't know. I just again I really don't have much more to say about these first 3 games. I think they're like, yeah, maybe get Hartenstein more involved, and I do think part of that is related to Quickly, but obviously get Grimes more involved. But aside from that, it just feels like they're working stuff out.
Yeah. So on that note, looking ahead, a lot of people have noticed that the Knicks have a pretty front-loaded schedule in terms of back-to-backs. I mentioned this earlier. In terms of the Knicks probably not having a record that we would have expected them to have, relative to 500 for a while. Are you concerned about that, or do you feel like this is just kind of happens every year in some way or another, or what are kind of your thoughts on that? And are you worried that people are going to maybe overreact if the Knicks are hovering around 500 for a while?
I'm not going to be worried about if people overreact, because that's what they'll do. I can't control it.
It doesn't matter if you overreact.
I can't control that. Do I think people overreact? Probably. I think that's fine. I just like the schedule is tough to start. They might catch a break here tomorrow against Cleveland. Cleveland, it looks like they may be out without Garland, Allen, and somebody else, maybe Dean Wade. But I mean, look, they might still get Mitchell and Mobley. Obviously, those guys are very capable of helping them win.
Don't we want Allen and Garland in the game based on how
maybe the lights are too bright? But like, yeah, I think again, like you get the back-to-back against Cleveland. It's very hard to beat our team both games of back-to-back.
Let alone a really good team, right?
Yeah, let alone a really good team. I know Cleveland hasn't gotten off to the best start either. So injuries have been part of that. To be fair to them, they've missed guys for a certain amount of time. So I don't know. Like if people want to overreact about 3 games or the start after the first, I think like the first 11 games we have are pretty brutal before the schedule softens up a bit. But like the Knicks just need to get through these first 15, 20 games. And if they do that, they should be fine. They got the schedule is so stupid. They play tomorrow at Cleveland. They play Wednesday against Cleveland at home. Then they get the Bucks. They travel to the Bucks on Friday. Honestly, this might not be a bad time to play the Bucks. Look, they have Giannis and Dame, so they can win whenever. But like, they look like they're definitely still in the feel out process.
Like when we played the Heat, we were one of the first teams to play the Heat after LeBron signed there, right? So, and we won, right? Didn't we win that first game we played against them? When they started 8-8.
Yeah, I think you're talking about a different game. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about when like Chauncey Billups hit a big three against him or whatever the fuck it was.
No, that was post trade. I'm talking about.
I know they had one at the Garden that we came back and beat them in the fourth quarter at that time. But yeah, like I mean,
that was the Chauncey game. No, I'm thinking of a different season. I'm thinking of a season where the Knicks were actually just god awful and they beat the Heat. But
I mean, to your point, that happys. Like, yes, like it does look like that a little bit. Yesterday, the game against,
but that Heat team started 8-8. So
yeah,
separate from the Knicks, they it took a time for two of the
8
best
and 9,
players.
I think they started actually.
Yeah, the two of the best players, the top 20 players ever. One is the top 2. Bosch is obviously probably top 100 all time. It took them time to figure it out, and the Bucks are probably not at that level. So
yeah, I think the Bucks are like it's not a bad time to play these teams. So like honestly, this week you go 2-1. You're sitting there after this week at 3-3. I think you've got to feel pretty good about that. All things considered, you've already played 2 back-to-backs. They've traveled 2 on these back-to-backs, which is brutal. Like that's the thing that really pisses me off about these back-to-backs earlier in the season for them is you're not even getting like, oh well, they're both at home, or it's like, oh, it's we're playing at home and then we have to go to Brooklyn the next day or something, right?
Or you're like in LA to Phoenix, right? It's like they went from Atlanta to New Orleans, like
yeah, and then they're gonna go from Cleveland to New York, which is not an easy back-to-back either. So like they're traveling quite a bit on these back-to-backs. I'm not trying to make excuses. Like I said, I think if they can get through this week 2-2, you'll be fine. Even if they go 1-2, I'm not going to lose my mind over it, man. You'll be 2-4, 6 games in. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. Yeah, like I will like after this week though. Next week seems pretty big. Like they get the Clippers at home. I know the Clippers look really good in a couple games. They're like not so great in other games.
Yeah, but going coast to coast is always tough, right? So
yeah,
you think the Knicks have an advantage there.
Yeah, and then they get the Spurs next Wednesday, and they get the Hornets next Sunday. I know that the Spurs have Victor Wembanyama. He's not looked great.
Who's that?
I watched, exactly. He has not looked great. They have not looked great, unsurprisingly. I mean, I guess surprising to some since they do have Devin Vassell, who is the greatest player of all time. But yeah, like this schedule, if they can go 2-1 this week, they're 3-3. They have a chance to be above 500 after the next 6 games. And I think considering the schedule, how it's all lined up against them, I think you'd take that. If you got offered that right now, I'd definitely take it. So
yeah, I mean, I think if they're like after All-Star break, I think there's a big potential to surge. That schedule is soft. I was looking at this and there's like, I think they can go on like a 15-20 game winning streak or like something like 17-3 over a 20 game stretch. So yeah, I agree completely. Like if they can tread water over the first part of the season, now the downside of that, of course, is, injuries will mount, right? This is a deep team, so maybe that's something you lean into, but they just need to, they can't just let the bottom fall out at the start of the season because the opportunities will be there in the back half.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think in some ways you just have to kind of like weather the storm of a season, and we can sit here and talk about the schedule all we want. At the end of the day, you play the same teams. Like you play the same teams, the same amount of games, more or less, every year. You play them home and away in the Western Conference. You play them however many times in the East, and it's like these things are consistent. So I don't know. The schedule stuff to me is just not worth like focusing on too much. If like I do agree that like the back-to-back stuff to start the season it feels especially brutal, but like you're gonna have to play these games anyway. So just get through this first, 15,
How
20
much?
games, I think they'll be okay.
How much does I think you probably have a much better understanding of this than me, in terms of a point spread, right? Or if you're thinking about this in terms of point spread, how much of a difference is it, all else equal, to be playing a second game of back to back versus with a day of rest in the middle? Do you have an idea about that, or I don't know if anyone's done that analysis? Like, what's the difference in terms of point spread?
Like from if
Yeah,
you have
so
a
let's say the
back-to-back.
Knicks are 3.5 point favorites normally against a team, but then let's say the other team is playing on a day of rest. The Knicks are in a second game of a back to back. Like, what does that usually change in terms of spread?
I have no idea, to be honest. I don't know. I imagine it probably doesn't move the spread as much as people think. Because I mean, last year, like, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Knicks actually played well in the second end of back-to-backs last year. So if anything, you would think it might work in their favor in that sense. But like, seasons are weird and not
Do you
consistent.
think that was because Tibbs was forced to play quickly and some of the bench players more? That's why they played better on second games of back to back.
Maybe it was, but no, I just think I think they have good depth. I think they care most nights. They're pretty consistent, and look, the things they're good at travel. So like even in these games we've lost to both Boston and the Pelicans, you win the possession battle to the degree that we have, you're probably going to win more than not. Like if you keep winning the possession battle to the degree that we did, especially in those games, you will probably win more than not. If there's, I mean, I don't even know again, I don't even know how much to take away from this. I did feel like we got broken down off the dribble quite a bit against Atlanta, but like they also have Trey and DeJounte, so that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's
And
mostly Brunson, right?
yeah, Brunson, I thought he started off the season as good as you could hope for him defensively against Boston.
That's because Drew is not very dynamic off the dribble.
He has not been great the last couple of games. I will say that on defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's always just going to be a bad matchup for him. But, that's why the Knicks have basically everyone else who plays guard minutes is a really good defender. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. There have been some players the Knicks have either been attached to or have, whatever, that have popped a little bit. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, it seems like there's a lot of talk about some of these guys, like, oh, the Knicks should have gotten him. Let's start with Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren has put up a line that I think only LeBron and one other player had put up. I know that you were higher on Duren at the draft. Just seeing a guy like that pop change maybe your evaluation of what they did in that draft.
No, like he's a center. Mitch is a really good center. I have Jalen Duren on my fantasy team, so I'm happy for that. But like, if you're doing like 2022 NBA draft, like regrets, that is not one. I don't know why. Like, why I don't know why this is always the Knicks too. It's like, oh, the Knicks passing this guy. I mean, he got drafted 13th or whatever the fuck it was, or is it? No, it was 11th, right? I don't remember whatever it was. I mean,
no, it was 13th. 11th was we traded down.
Oh, that's right. That was Usman Jang. Yeah, like if he wants to, I mean, Charlotte took Mark Williams over him, right?
Yeah,
and I like Mark Williams a lot, and like
I think that was a legitimate debate. I mean, it's the
my
crazy
point is,
wingspan guy versus the kind of athletic, skillsy guy. Right?
My point is like, why would I care about that? Like, our centers have been fine this season, and they've been good. They were good last season, and like that's.
Well, the question would be, can Duren be like more than someone like Mitch? Can he be? Because I think a lot of people do think, a surprising number of people actually think Mitch holds the Knicks back, which I don't agree with. I think me and you have both talked. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about that. But if Duren evolves into something like Bam, that would be the kind of rationale there.
I think I'll worry about it if and whenever that happens. I actually would say I actually watched a little bit of the Pistons on Friday, and was it yesterday played or was the day before? I don't know. They played the Bulls. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, but one of those days I watched them also. It was Saturday they did that. So I actually think like the reason their defenses look better this year has very little to do with him. It's because they're playing actual good perimeter defenders now. That Oscar Thompson, Cade, and Killian lineup to start these games. Like, say whatever you want about Killian Hayes, he's a pretty good defender. Cade's a good defender. Oscar's a good defender. And they're just not giving up a lot of dribble penetration. They're switching a lot. They're making it very hard on teams. And
you said dual penetration.
Huh?
I thought you said dual penetration. Sorry.
Oh, no. Well, they're not allowing that either. And Burks, he's spacing the floor fine. They've also played like the fucking Hornets, the Bulls, and the Heat. The Heat have not gotten off to a good start. I don't see anybody like freaking out about whatever the fuck they did or didn't do yet.
No, but I'll give our friend Kelly Oberner had a very elite agenda post about how, I even forget the guy's name. Whoever they replaced Gabe Vincent with is averaging 5 points a game, and so is Vincent. So I'll give Miami knows how to control the PR. I'll give them that.
They are good at that. But yeah, like I like what I see from Duren. I think he's a good player. Obviously, he's a more talented scorer than Mitch will ever be. We know this. How much that matters, I'm very unsure. And as far as like Mitch holds us back, I've thought that before. I've even argued for it before. I think the threshold, though, if he's actually rebounding this well offensively, which he did last year, and he did this, and he's continued off in the same vein now, I think that's a totally different threshold that you have to hit for most centers to be so unequivocally
and
better
defensively, right? He's also an elite defender, sub-elite at worst, right?
So I'm not regretting the Jalen Duren thing, and I think as soon as Brunson gets his shit together from mid range, that conversation will probably cease to happen from anybody. But yeah, it is cool that a guy that went in the lottery and was considered the best big in the draft apparently was really disrespected by everybody who doubted him, his haters and his doubters. Only geniuses put you on Jalen Duren. Only the real draftniks knew who Jalen Duren was.
It's a feeling only him and LeBron know.
So. Yes. Yeah, I mean, look,
and Kanye. So.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I honestly, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here? I have nothing else to talk about.
There was one other guy in that vein. Kelly Oubre has started the season pretty well.
Don't care.
I'm shocked to hear this, Shwin.
Yeah. Kelly Oubre could average a fucking 50-point triple-double for the season, and I'd still be like, yeah, he sucks. Fuck him.
Do you think the context in Philly has changed, or do you think this is just an early season aberration?
I think it might be a little bit of both. Like, it definitely helps that Harden's not playing, I think, because they need somebody.
And Max is balling out.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that helps. Like, he needs somebody to pick up the usage, and Oubre is always more than happy to do that. But, like, you know what? Phillies played 2 games, right? They played.
No, so my take is with Oubre, I think you want him to not pick up that usage, right? It's like with Harrison Barnes, like when the guy, like he was at his best when he kind of could be an ancillary piece, or Wiggins, or basically everyone that goes to the Warriors. And with Oubre, when he's been empowered to do shit like that, it seems like that's when people are like, oh my God, he scores 20 points a game, but he's at 51% true shooting and doesn't do literally anything else. So my question is, do you think it's more the fact that Philly does have a lot of good players? So he's kind of, could it be something like Wiggins kind of turning around his career, or Barnes on the Warriors, I guess not turning around, but going from as a prospect to being this high usage envisioned guy to like role player, right? Do you think that's kind of maybe, I don't know how much you watch at Philly, but I'm curious about that. Because Oubre is a guy that I got into arguments with people about. People were like, we need a big wing. And I'm like, no, not that guy, but he's playing well. So.
I watched him a little bit yesterday against Portland. I watched their opener, obviously, after the Bills were done on Thursday night against the Bucks, or at halftime, I guess I should say, the game. He's playing well for sure right now. A lot of that is he's shooting well, which I don't know why I would believe that he's going to continue to shoot as well as he shot from the field. I think it can go both ways in terms of like, should he get the usage? Should he not? What's better for him? I don't know, but I do think they need somebody to take up usage as a team and help other guys kind of stay in roles that suit them better. They look like they're playing more freely offensively. Like I like the dribble handoff stuff. That's better. But like they're 1-1. They played the Bucks and then they played a really bad Blazers team right now. That team is awful. I think Chauncey Billups is a fucking terrible head coach, by the way.
Well, they are tanking, right?
I mean, they're tanking, but they're not trying to lose games right at the start of the season. And they're not playing, like they're not running the rotations like that. I just think they have too many. I think they got to get their vets out of there. I think they need to just give the keys to Scoot. I saw way too much Malcolm Brogdon bring the ball up the floor yesterday when he was on the floor with Scoot. Did not like that.
Of the year, though.
Yeah, sixth man. Did not like that, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. Oubre is fine. Good for him. I don't really care. No, I'm not. I don't regret that at all. He wouldn't get those. He wouldn't get the usage here, by the way. Like he definitely wouldn't. So
yeah, it's funny because he'd probably be taking the usage away from RJ, really, right? Because there's no way Tibbs would play him at the 4. So
yeah. All right. I think that is a good place to end it. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPad89. Nothing to plug. Just stay woke to media bias. Michigan's innocent, I tell you.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. I'm sure it'll be a very fair and open and honest investigation that occurs. I have nothing to plug myself, so I'll just plug all the work at Strickland. Check out all of the great pods. Check out the work that Sam and Tyrese and Jeff are doing on the post games after each game, and check out Strictly NFL. I think Con and Jeff are doing a really great job with that. They should have a very special guest on this week. All right, that is our show for today. Thank you to BetOnline for all of their wonderful help. Again, that's our show for today. Hope everybody has a great week. What do you think the Knicks go? What do you think they go this week? 1-2, 2-1, 0-3, 3-0. What's up?
It's Cleveland twice in LA. That's good.
Milwaukee.
Oh, 1-2. I think they split with Cleveland, and yeah, I'm more optimistic than I would be if it was later in the season, but I'm still gonna pick Milwaukee 1-2, and I'll be okay with that.
I'm gonna go 2-1.
Do you think they sweep Milwaukee, or they sweep Cleveland, or they?
I think they split Cleveland. I think each one gets one on the other's home floor, and then I think they beat Milwaukee in Milwaukee. I think that might be a Brunson get right game. All right,
they did split. Each one did get one on the other's floor in the playoffs, so makes sense. They got one. They won game 2. Sorry.
Yeah, they won game 2, but that's on their home floor.
Yeah, they didn't win them MSG.
They haven't beaten Michigan. They haven't beaten New York. Yeah, I know. They haven't beaten the Knicks.
I mean, there's another team from Ohio that hasn't beaten Michigan in a while either, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it's because we,
we're just so we're Shwin, we're just kicking so many Ohio teams' asses that we're just getting confused over them.
We stole their signals. Yeah, I think 2-1. Feel good about the Knicks end of the week at 500. It would be really nice if they just win on Friday, because then I could be happy for the whole weekend with them. Like I get the whole weekend to be like, oh yeah, the Knicks are great. What a fucking great win. Whereas when they lost on Saturday, I was like, man, this sucks. This is annoying. All right. Anyway, that is our show for today. Hope everybody has a great week, and thank you to our sponsor, BetOnline. I will see you on Friday.